Thank you, Member. And the call is to the member for Longman.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it is always a great pleasure to follow the eloquence of the member for Kooyong. He and I have had many discussions about this budget, and just down the hallway in another room, the Federal Treasurer is concluding his press conference updating the country on the national account figures. And I think I will absolutely use this opportunity to update the House on those figures as well. Because what the national account figures show is that our strong economic action strategy is working. A strategy that recognises that growth and prosperity in this nation come from the private sector, not from a big, overbearing and intervening government. The national account figures that the Treasurer is updating the nation's media on now show that there has been 3.5% growth over this year. Significantly, predominantly, this growth has come from the non-mining sector. We've seen the smallest current account deficit since 1980. That's 10 years before I was born. Household spending is up, which is showing us that confidence is returning to the Australian economy. And most significantly, since the beginning of the year, there has been 106,000 new jobs created. There has been 79,000 new full-time jobs. Mr Deputy Speaker, what this shows is that our economic action strategy is working. We are removing barriers for private sector growth and investment, whether that's getting rid of the carbon tax or the mining tax, or getting rid of over $1 billion in red tape every single year. We are freeing the private sector of our economy up so that they can grow, prosper and employ more people. But as we look at the economic narrative of our nation, it's important that we see where we have come from and where we are going. And in 2007, when the former coalition government left office, there was a $20 billion surplus. There was $50 billion in the bank, and all of Labor's debt had been paid off. And then the Labor Party came to power, and we saw our spending increase at the fastest rate of the 17 advanced IMF economies in the world. We saw our debt increase at the third highest rate of the 17 advanced IMF economies across the world. And Mr Deputy Speaker, that was borrowed money against the next generation. So where are we now? If we didn't act the way that we act in these bills before the House and the way that we act in the federal budget, the debt would reach $667 billion a year. The interest repayment on the debt this year alone would be $12 billion, and that would head to $17 billion if we didn't act. Those are big figures. So let's put them into perspective for what it means for everyday Australians across the nation. The debt bill would reach over $24,000 for every single man, woman and child. This year, the interest on that debt bill would be $500. If we didn't act, as I said, that gets to $17 billion in interest, or again, in the personal perspective, over $1,200 for every single man, woman and child. The $12 billion in interest in this year alone, money that is effectively dead money, would have funded the complete upgrade of the Bruce Highway for over $8 billion, the complete upgrade of the Gateway Motorway for over $1.2 billion. It would have completely built a new tertiary hospital for Queensland at over $2 billion, and we still would have had hundreds of millions of dollars left over. That's what we're paying in interest in real terms. That's what our nation is missing out. And as the member for Kooyong pointed out before me, before we deal with the significant debt burden that we face as a nation, that $24,000 bill that all Australians owe, we have to deal with the challenge, and I say it's a challenge, not a problem, but the challenge of an ageing population. Today, as the member for Kooyong pointed out, there are 5 people working for every 1 person in retirement. By 2050, that will reach only 2.7 people for every person in retirement. The percentage of the population aged over 75 will go from about 6% of the population to over 14% of the population. And what the Productivity Commission has said is if we don't do anything, taxes would have to rise by 21% to fund that. That's before we get to that $24,000 bill for every man, woman and child. So as a nation, we have to make a choice, and that's what this budget is about. Do we say that the problems that we have inherited are too hard? Do we say that we will simply run up a greater credit card bill and hand that over to the next generation? Or do we say that as a government and as a country, we live within our means, so that what we hand over to the next generation of Australians is a nation with as much, if not more, opportunity than we currently inherit? Because if we don't, a young Australian growing up in the decades to come will be born with that $24,000 debt bill. They'll be born with the need to pay at least 21% higher taxes. And they'll be born in a nation where the government doesn't have the ability to invest in roads and schools and hospitals across the decades to come. And I am not prepared to be part of a government that says the challenges we face as a nation are all too hard, that we are not prepared to make difficult decisions today, and that the next generation will pick up the bill. So those are the choices that we have to make in this budget, and I am proud to say I am part of a government that is prepared to take on this challenge so that future generations can inherit a nation with greater prosperity and greater opportunity. But beyond simply living within our means, we have to, as I said, go for growth in the private sector. And since coming to government, that is exactly what we've done, and that's what those job growth figures demonstrate. We have moved to cut the carbon tax, we have moved to abolish the mining tax, and we are cutting over $1 billion of red tape every single year from small business predominantly. And in my electorate, what that means, and I have specific examples where we have gone literally door to door with local businesses, is we have found those overbearing and intervening and unnecessary regulations placed on small businesses, and we've removed them, saving local businesses thousands of dollars a month so that they can go out and thrive and prosper and employ more people. That is the role of the private sector, and it is the role of the government to simply stop being the problem. Beyond that, where the market is not best placed to do so, I believe it's the role of the government to invest in those productivity-increasing measures, those vital pieces of infrastructure that our nation needs. And in this budget, there's over $50 billion invested into infrastructure, which is great for jobs, great for the economy, and great for commuters across our nation. In my electorate, the Bruce Highway is the great arterial that links our region to Brisbane and to the growing population in our north. It is the economic driver as much as the social driver of our region. And in this budget, we're investing over $3 billion between the Pine Rivers and Gympie, which will see significant upgrades across that highway and benefit local commuters and local families. We're investing over $16 million into the Diagula Highway. And as locals know, this has been a death trap for many years, and inaction by the former Labor government resulted in much more tragedy on that road. It is a great matter of pride that after campaigning in 2010 and finally coming to government in 2013, that I and the coalition government are able to deliver $16 million for that road. So on the infrastructure front, we're investing significantly so that we can go for growth, we can create the jobs, and we can see economic productivity lift. But we're also at the individual level creating amazing new opportunities, particularly for young people across our nation to find the jobs of the future. We're creating, for the first time ever, the same opportunities for young people going to TAFE to get a diploma or an advanced diploma, or for a tradie, the same opportunities that are applied to a student going to university. So if you go to achieve a diploma or an advanced diploma, often people from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, you will not have to pay a single dollar upfront. First time ever for our nation. In fact, you only pay back that loan when you earn over $50,000, the same as it applies to higher education. If you decide that you want to become a tradie, we are saying that we will give you $20,000 as a HEC-style loan to get you through your apprenticeship so that you can go on and find meaningful employment in the future. If you move to get a job, we'll give you $6,000 if you've been on welfare. If you come from a rural area and come into a metropolitan area, we'll give you $3,000. If you keep that job for a year, we'll give you $2,500. So this budget is about building opportunity for the future so that all of our nation can thrive and prosper and reach its potential.
Member,